Discovering Asian dramas back in 2018 was an enlightening moment for me, and I've never looked back. I enjoy talking about them just as much as watching them, so much so that I decided to create a podcast with a heavier focus on Chinese dramas but passing through Korean, Japanese, Thai, and Filipino dramas. Welcome to the Tea and Soju Asian Drama Podcast, your corner for drama talking. For more tea and soju content, consider joining Patreon, where I release extra reviews and polls. Everything is linked in the episode description. Hello and welcome back to another episode. I'm your host Liliana, and this is a post-recording message. So you're about to listen to a review episode of Go Ahead with the guest Lola. Now, first of all, thank you very much for coming on, Lola. But we do have a section at the beginning of the episode where it is just mainly a conversation between myself and Lola, just, questions back and forth. And that was really, really nice to record. It just kind of flowed naturally. So I hope you guys enjoy listening to that. But I wanted to pop in first and just let you know that, so basically I kind of had the idea of forming a Discord server for tea and soju, but I mainly wanted to become a little community for Asian drama watchers in general. So if you listen to the episode ahead, you will find out that community is quite something that's quite important to me, and it's something that I've taken away from podcasting and from just being in the Asian drama watcher community. So I wanted to create a safe space where that could happen. So Discord seems to be the best platform for it. Twitter seems to be blowing up and on its final leg, so to speak, and I didn't want to lose touch with people that I've come across, and that kind of spurred me on to do that. But this is available to anyone who would like to join. Discord is a pretty easy app to, get yourself into, and you just get to basically instant message people. You get to read fun chats. Dramas have their own conversation, so everything can be kept separate. You can mute certain chats, and also you can actually hide spoilers, which makes it such a great app for talking about dramas in general. So this isn't sponsored at all. I wish this was sponsored, but it isn't. But I just wanted to pop in and leave this message here so that you guys can, have that option there, that if you're looking for a community to just talk Asian dramas and you want somewhere safe that isn't necessarily the, big wide web out there, this server is there. There will be an invite link in the description notes, but also if you can't access that, if you go into any of my socials on Linktree, there will be a link for Discord over there as well. So that's it. I just wanted to pop on and leave that little message there. I hope you guys really enjoy the episode ahead. I absolutely loved recording it. Lola was such a fun guest to have on, and it does just feel like a conversation between friends. So join us, won't you? Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Tea and Soju Asian Drama Podcast. I'm your host Liliana, and we have another guest episode today. In this week's episode, we're going to be reviewing the Chinese drama Go Ahead, which is one of my all-time favorites, and I've mentioned it plenty on the podcast. But we are doing so with a very special guest, and that is Lola. Now, I was a guest on her podcast, so she's kindly returning the favor and coming on Tea and Soju, but I will let her just go ahead and do a little introduction herself.
Hello, I'm Lola from Lola Pops Off About K-Dramas podcast. And over there at my podcast, I just actually pop off about Korean dramas. And I am I wouldn't say I'm new anymore in the kind of K-drama podcasting game. It's been about 3 years now that I've been doing that. And I do watch other Asian dramas in general, but I do kind of specifically focus on K-dramas. And
So,
thank you, Liliana, for having me.
I'm very excited for this. I'm very, very excited. I watched Go Ahead while it was airing, and it was great to actually go back and do some rewatching. And it'll be really exciting to hear what you have to say because you're seeing it like through new eyes. So, of a person who hasn't watched it before. Or also, it'll be very interesting because when I watched it, it blew up. So I was in the midst of that storm of everybody watching it and everybody wanting more from it. So it'll be really interesting to see like what you think compared to like what my feelings were for it back then and even now. But before we get into that, let's do a little couple of questions for Lola. And the first one is just what is like your Asian drama journey? Where did it all start for you?
So I love this question because my very first podcast episode for actually is titled Journey into K-Drama Land. And it was a wonderful little story that I love telling. And it's fun for me to tell because it weirdly starts off this journey, this Asian drama journey, with Chinese cinema.
Oh, that's
Specifically,
interesting.
I know. It's specifically Hong Kong cinema. And it's a very long story. That's why I did a whole podcast episode for it. But to shorten it, I really just kind of first watched City Hunter from 1993 with Jackie Chan when I
Yeah.
was around 9 years old, and which is also an adaptation of a Japanese manga. And then there's the K drama City Hunter with Lee
Yeah.
Min Ho. And so it was a full circle moment when I was watching City Hunter with Min Ho, but that's I digress. But I got really entrenched into Hong Kong cinema throughout my teen years, and the actors and the directors, I just kind of like was all about Hong Kong cinema. I would like read books on it. I followed a lot of websites, a lot of kind of blogs about it. And then that over time led me to Japanese films. I just got really into Asian cinema as a whole. And when I was watching Japanese films, I fell in love with a Japanese actor named Shun Oguri, and he was just beautiful to me.
Yeah.
So I started to look for other things to watch him in, and he was in a lot of Japanese dramas at the time. So then I started watching a lot of Japanese dramas.
Mm.
And one of his kind of most popular J dramas that he did, one of his first ones was called Hana Kimi. And it's interesting because that drama, while I was watching it, and people were like on the different forums, were like, hey, if you really like Hana Kimi, which is a J drama about a girl who dresses up as a boy to go into an all boys school, they're like, you might really like this one drama. And I was like, okay, let me check out their recommendation. And sure enough, it was Coffee Prince. And they're like,
Oh,
yeah, see how it all comes full circle right
it
there. So
does.
I I know. And I was like, oh, and this was right after Coffee Prince ended, the summer of 20, I think it was 2007. And I started it right after it ended, and then the rest is history. So I would say Coffee Prince was also, like many others, my gateway kind of K-drama.
So you're like an OG of two Asian dramas in general.
I think I kind of am, just a little
Yeah,
bit.
you
Just
can like Coffee Prince is like, one of those. I personally haven't watched it. It's not necessarily the drama. It's I have a really difficult time watching like older dramas in general. I'm a sucker
I've
for
heard
like
that a lot.
yeah, I'm a sucker for things looking pretty and looking nice. And I know that sounds terrible. That sounds
Oh
so
my
terrible. But like the hairstyles and everything, it just throws me right out of the drama. And then all of a sudden I'm like, oh, what is it? Like, I'm rolling my eyes and I'm like, I know this is supposed to be really
God.
good, but I can't unsee like everything, so yeah, so the way that I watch old dramas, and by watch I mean watch in quotation marks, is because
Quotation.
yeah, because I listen to like your podcast and Daybuck, Jess on the Daybuck and all of
Yes.
that
Yeah.
when you guys do like all the older dramas, and I listen to
Yes.
that, and that for me is enough. Like I've watched the drama
That's enough.
then.
I love that. I think that it makes me feel better about now realizing that I could do more episodes now about older dramas, because to hear that some people are like, I don't want to go back and actually watch it, but I do kind of want to just know the drama as if I watched it in a
Yeah.
way. So it That sounds good. That's good to know. Okay, I can do
Yeah, I
that. I
think
could do
I'm
more.
not the. I don't think I'm the only one. I think a lot of people think the same. Like, not a lot of people. Like, a lot of people will just want to go back and watch the classics. But even so, they will probably want to go back and then like listen to what other people thought because there's lots of people that by then are definitely not talking about these dramas. So yeah, but there is people out there like me who just don't want to. And to be honest, there's so many dramas like constantly like coming out that it's hard to like find the time.
Right.
I used to be a binge 1K drama, move to the next, binge one drama, move. I
Mhm.
can't do that anymore. I just can't. Like, it's quite interesting
Either.
to see how over yeah, I just can't do it. Like, it's really interesting to see like how over time you're watching patterns kind of like change because
Change. Mhm.
I'm very much an on-air kind of person now, and if I get behind on-air dramas, I it's really hard for me to go back to them and catch up, which is ridiculous because it's like they're right there. Why am I? Yeah. So,
Absolutely. I'm the same way now. Like you said, I think I'm just a little in shock by the amount of K-dramas that I have to watch that are like currently airing in comparison to like years ago, where I was the one going back and watching older things and
mm,
kind of slowly watching the newer ones. And I'm in shock. I'm overwhelmed. I'm like, this is way too many at a time. But I've been doing really well this year, I think, keeping up with a lot of my
yeah.
K-dramas that are currently airing, but that again doesn't leave any room for rewatches or like going back and watching old things.
Mm,
And like me watching Go Ahead, for example, was like, how do I squeeze
that
this?
in. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But I did, and which I'm gonna be honest, I'm gonna tell you my secret. I did 2 days, like literally, like
Did
20
you
episodes, 20
did
episodes.
you binge it?
I
Whoa.
binged it because couldn't do it any other way. I was like, I'm gonna
Yeah,
hold off the week for my currently airing dramas and just like that weekend focus on Go
just
Ahead, and
binge
that's
it
how I
all.
really was able to do it.
Actually, that's not a bad way to watch it because I for me personally at the time, I loved watching it on air because I just love all the chatter and everything that comes with watching an on-air drama. But it's also torture to wait for new episodes, especially when you're
Torture,
so
torture.
invested in the characters. It's like I just need to know. Like I just give me everything. So and then when it's done, you're like, what am I supposed to do
It's
now?
done.
Like
Yeah,
what
like
am I
wait, it's
supposed to
done.
do
Wait a minute.
now?
There's like a double-edged sword. Yeah, you're like, I like it when it's current, like when you're watching it slowly. But then even with binging, it's also kind of like, wait, it's all over. Like I didn't get a chance. I can't, you can't participate as well, like as when it's currently airing. So
I think for
yeah,
me, yeah, for the currently airing, I thrive off all like the chatter and like just like you getting to find new people that are watching the same thing.
same thing.
I really do thrive off that, energy of everybody watching a drama that they really, really are enjoying all at the same time. I mean, it doesn't happen all the time, but when it does happen, I feel like
No.
it's so special that everybody's kind of like in the same boat and just loving on a drama. Like it's like a special energy that comes along, and so I really do just enjoy and adore all of that. So I think that's why for me on air dramas just work so well. um but yeah, so one other little question. How did you, so we've talked about like your journey into dramas, and now we've known you got into Chinese movies, so that was really interesting. How did you get into podcasting itself? Like how, because I've told my story, and my story was it was very random. Everybody just kind of like said, you watch a lot of Chinese dramas. There's not a lot of Chinese podcasts out there. Maybe you
Yeah.
should do one. And I was like 3 months later, I was like, okay, right, I'll do
I'll
one.
do it.
Yeah, I'll do one. So that's pretty much mine. But what was your journey? How did you think I'm gonna start a podcast?
That's a great question. So for me, it was basically looking for community after years of missing the community, the K-drama watching community. I had once long ago had a pretty popular Tumblr
Yeah.
that I ran for dramas in Asian cinema. And I mean, It was pretty popular, I'm not gonna lie. And I kind of, was doing this right after I graduated undergraduate and college, and I loved it. I loved every second of
Mm.
it. It was everything and more. But then life happened and
Yeah.
I just kind of suddenly abandoned it and never really looked back. But then years later, I kind of was like, I'm still watching K-dramas, but I don't have that community like I used to. So I was thinking of a way of getting back into it. And I originally was like, I'm a little too nervous for YouTube.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
decided that the next best thing would be podcasting.
Yeah.
That's how I ended up into podcasting. Just looking for a community, looking for K-drama watching
Yeah.
friends that I kind of feel like I lost when I was on Tumblr, back when I was on Tumblr, so I wanted to find it again.
Do you know what? Maybe with the crash we were talking just before we started recording, with the crash and
Yeah,
burning, impending doom of Twitter,
of
maybe it
Twitter.
is, yeah, maybe it is time that you bring back your Tumblr and
Tumblr,
revamp
Tumblr.
it.
Go back. Go
There's
back. I'm going
actually,
back. You might be onto something. No, seriously, this might
I'm
be the
not joking.
time.
Like, just pick up your account, revamp
Yes,
it to your
it's still there.
podcast.
It is still there. So I
There
might
you
have to
go.
pick it back up. Yeah.
Log
Okay.
back
Okay.
in, try and figure out what your password was however many years ago.
No, it was almost it was about 10 years ago. Around 10 years ago. That's when I last was on, I think last posted on Tumblr,
Look,
almost 10 years.
I hadn't used Tumblr. I was a Tumblr fanatic when,
Yes.
back in the heyday, because it was just one of those apps that I absolutely adored for like
Uh,
community. I'm a huge like fantasy fan and like urban fantasy books and things like that. So back then I was like on Tumblr constantly for all of like my book stuff. And like I think a couple of months ago, I was like, people were like abandoning ship on Twitter and they were going, we're off to Tumblr. And I was like, I haven't been on Tumblr for
I
ages. Couldn't
know.
remember. Like, I didn't. My Tumblr back then was really, really tiny, so it didn't bother me. So I was like, I opened up a Tumblr for the Tea and Soju podcast, and I was like, well, we'll just see how it goes. Barely posted anything on it, if I'm being honest,
Yeah.
but it is open. But yours,
There.
you
It's
could just, revamp it.
you
2023.
can.
There you go.
I should totally log back in because you're right. I don't know what it even looks like over there. It could be a totally different experience than what I remember, but I think it's worth me looking into it for sure because I still love it like as an archive of that time in my
Yeah.
life that I ran it because all of it's like all those dramas from like 2011, 2012, like you'll see
And
2013.
I'm sure there'll be like people that have a lot of fun like looking back at your posts and like looking through older dramas as well and like, what you were watching at the time. So there you
Oh, this
go.
is giving me some ideas.
Yeah,
Thank you,
well,
Lilia.
you're very welcome. You're very welcome.
That's something
Uh,
I love whenever I talk with you. I feel like you always are thinking of ways to kind of build community on your end. And so like how we were talking about just, earlier
I feel
about Twitter
like
and platforms and stuff. So I love this. I
Yeah,
love
I
this.
feel like I don't know. Like being an immigrant, you're always constantly searching for community in general.
Community.
And whether
Mhm.
that be, where I am in the UK, looking for Portuguese community or,
Mhm.
looking for Asian drama community, whatever it may be, you always want,
Yeah.
I feel like there's such a beautiful thing about, belonging to a community and what they can
Belonging.
do for you. So yeah, I'm always excited to like expand. And also I'm always so excited about Asian dramas. I just want to like share it with people in
Me
general.
too.
Because that's like the best thing. Like to me,
Yes.
one of the best things I've said it time and time again, and I will say it time and time again. One of the best things that I have found that, that have come out of me creating the podcast is like the community, not only
Yes.
listeners, because like I at the time I didn't even know if there was going to be listeners or not. I wasn't really that, big on it. But the thing that surprised me the most is like the community of creators that I've like
Yes.
come across, like
Exactly.
you and Jess and
Exactly.
Caitlin, and just the Soul Sisters pod and all of the guests that I have on, like the community that you build between like content creators and like
Yes.
specifically Asian drama content creators is such a lovely one that I feel like they're not even like fellow creators, they're just like friends that you've kind of
Exactly.
built. relationships with. So yeah, that is one of the things that I absolutely love about, the podcast, and that it's brought me is the community of like content creators, but also the listeners and whatnot. I
Yeah.
feel like that's like the most rewarding thing. Somebody coming up
I,
to like slipping into your DMs and being like, "Oh my God, I listened to one of your episodes and I really enjoyed it, and now I'm gonna watch, I loved watching one of your recommendations." I feel like that's such a that's like the reward for like all
yes.
the work that we put into it, I think.
It is. It is the big reward. And I think, like I said, coming from a place where I used to have that
Mm,
and then not been going
yeah.
without it for so long, it definitely was like a an itch. It was like I
Mm,
have to get this back. I cannot bother my my friends who don't watch Asian
yeah,
dramas
yeah, yeah.
anymore. To go find other friends, okay? Like, and so that's what I think ended up happening and forced me into podcasting. I didn't have people like who actually forced your hand to start recording your podcast, but I did have that same urge of like, hey, there's community out there that I can tap back into.
Mm.
I need to tap back into it, and that's why I had to start podcasting.
Yeah. And I think also it's like finding those spaces that are safe spaces as well. Because I feel like
Safe,
that's so important.
safe,
Because, like, in the big wide world of social media, there's like community, and then there's like those spaces that are supposed to be community, but they are not safe communities in a sense.
exactly.
So I feel like, that's why it's so important. That's why, I was just telling you before we started recording, that's why I went and like created the Discord server, because I feel like
Discord,
you can just like so easily, make that a safe space for people to like go and do what, just chat. It's like
yes,
that's all you need.
chat.
That's all you need. So
Yeah,
yeah.
I
So
completely agree.
moving on, last little question, and then we can get on into the go ahead review. So, if you
Mhm.
had to pick some of your favorite Asian dramas, what would those be? I feel like this is always the hardest question to answer.
It's always the hardest, and I always say I can't give you like a top five. I can give you a top 100.
Yeah,
Um,
that sounds accurate. That sounds accurate.
top 100, but I can give you my favorite K drama of all time, which is Coffee Prince, because tied to that drama isn't just the story, obviously. It's the entire experience of watching it, what it led me to, how it has actually made me the person that I am today. Like
Yeah,
it's so much more going on with when I say Coffee Prince, that's my favorite K drama. So I don't care what anyone ever says about it. Like
yeah.
it is still to me the pinnacle of like my K drama watching experience. But to name other few, so I'm not just like Coffee Prince. Everyone says Coffee Prince, but like I am a big fan of like Asian. I'm sorry. Well, I am Asian drama in general, but I'm a big fan of action romance dramas. So
Hmm.
there was a period there where I was really into like City Hunter
Yeah.
with Minho, Healer. I love things like that. I also really enjoyed. There's a drama called Valid Love, which
Oh.
I don't. It's also called Righteous Love. So when you look it up, some people will find it under
Yeah,
Righteous
yeah,
Love
yeah.
or Valid, and it is to me one of the most beautiful dramas I've ever watched, but I don't think anyone really has watched it. So it always blows my mind. It's a rough one to get through, to be honest. There's infidelity is kind of a big theme in there, so it's not the easiest thing to watch, but it's absolutely beautiful and magical to some degree. And so I always talk about it as being one of my favorite dramas of all time, but I always know that no one usually knows what that is.
Yeah.
Like I guess, yeah, that's a great drama, but no one has watched it but you. Um, and then there's like this is because this is my first life, another fan fave, Heartless City. Uh, Again, action. The Devil Judge, which was a
Oh,
couple
that was really
years ago.
good. Yeah, yeah. That
So
was
good,
really, really good. Really
so
good.
good. And I was a big fan of My Liberation Notes. From was it last year?
Yes, I believe so. I
Yes,
watched that. Yeah, I also watched that one. Was it last year?
yeah, I think it was last year, and
Yeah, I think it was last year. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
that was
So
a big
that was
fan of.
also a good one.
So I can watch almost any genre. So I have favorites in all of them.
Mm.
But those are just a few off the top of my
I'm the
head.
same. I can do pretty much any genre, but I have to be in the right mood for it. Like I'm a very mood watcher. If I'm not in the
Yeah.
right, yeah, if I'm not in the right mood, then regardless of what drama it is, it's not gonna hit, with me. So yeah, that's me for sure. So,
I will say that there is a genre that I really don't watch actually, and it's medical. I cannot. I
oh,
don't do medical dramas very well because I don't do well with sad dramas in general.
yeah.
So that ties hand in hand usually with medical, and so I kind of just skip a lot of those. I if I do get one down, it's very rare,
Hmm.
very, very rare. But like this year, I watched Dr. Cha, which was surprising to me. But in usual, I don't watch medical dramas very often.
There we go. See, I there's probably a few that I'm like, ugh, like lawyer dramas. I don't mind them, but I feel like we had like a bunch of them back to back to back, and I'm like,
Ooh,
I need a break. I can't do another lawyer drama. I need like a little break. And I feel like also lawyer dramas are something that are way more specific to Korean dramas than there are to Chinese. There's barely like any lawyer dramas in Chinese drama land.
really?
Yeah, really. It's just not something that you necessarily watch. There's a few out there, but they're definitely not as popular as in South Korea, I don't think. At least are the ones that
With
I've watched. So
and in the like I said, in the recent years, there's been so many that I've gotten into law dramas because of it. Like I
yeah,
don't think I was as into them before, and
yeah,
then all of
yeah.
a sudden, because of like the onslaught of them, I'm like, I'm really getting into them. And there was one from last year, the $1 Lawyer, that I really loved, and I mean, it was so good. And it was supposed to be, I think, a second season, but because of some drama that happened on the set with like the writer and everything, they completely canceled the second season and like really like wrapped up the ending kind of quickly. And I was like,
Oh, that's
no,
really annoying. That's so
really
annoying when they
annoying.
do that. Yeah.
Yes, yes.
See, this
But
is why I'm not gonna lie. This is one thing that I always prefer in Chinese dramas over Korean. It's the fact that yes, they may be longer, but they're not gonna have a second season. So you know that for the most
mm,
part, you don't
really
have
know.
to wait. Whereas for Korean dramas, everything seems to really be like broken in second seasons, and I'm like,
I
what is happening?
This is so new. It's like this kind of I think it's this need to be a little bit more westernized when
Oh yeah,
with their
yeah,
kind of
yeah.
thinking, and it's so frustrating because one of the main reasons like over 10 years ago, over 15 years ago since I've been watching K dramas, that was the one thing that I said was the trait about Korean
Mm.
dramas that I thoroughly enjoy, or just Asian dramas in general. A lot of times was like you get one season, you get your whole story kind of in these certain amount of episodes, and then it's done. And you don't have to wait around for another season. You don't have to guess if they're going to come back or not, and if the actors are going to change in the second season. All the things that I was kind of like plagued by with a lot of growing up with some of the Western shows I used to watch. I was like traumatized, I think. And so I really enjoyed that about Asian dramas in general, like just having one season or just
Yeah.
having this is it. After 16 episodes, after 20 episodes, we're done. This new trend, I'm not a big fan of it. I cannot stand it, honestly, but there are a few ways that I can see them doing it properly, but it hasn't been done yet. They haven't done it yet. They could do it right, but they haven't done it right yet. So,
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see where they take it. I'm not a fan of this new
no,
age
no.
thing that they're
Yeah.
trying out. So we'll see. We'll see. Right, that is all the questions. Shall we get into the go ahead review? So I'm just going to
Yes.
read through the plot so listeners know if they haven't watched it in a while, they kind of like we can give them a little refresh of what it's about, and then I'll just run through director, cast, that sort of thing, and then we can go into the questions of, things about it so that we can sort of give our review like that. So, go ahead. The story revolves around three troubled youths who find solace in their common experiences to become the best family that they can be for each other. Growing up in dysfunctional households, three individuals who are unrelated by blood treat each other like family as they yearn for the love that they cannot find at home. eldest brother Ling Xiao, second brother He Zichui, and youngest sister Li Jianjian grew up together, experiencing life's joys and strife as they support each other's chosen paths. As Ling Xiao and He Zichui graduate from high school, they return to their original families. 9 years later, the three are reunited, but the heartaches from their complicated family past become a shadow that constantly lingers. Can they finally fix their personal issues to become better versions of themselves? That is actually a pretty good description. Let's like I
It's
took that out.
beautiful. So
Yeah,
well written.
this is
So well
from
written.
my.
I was just so impressed by that one. I was
I
like,
know,
oh,
right?
that's rare.
Whoever wrote this plot from, so this was taken, I took this synopsis out from MDL, and if you guys have listened to me for a while, or any Asian drama podcast who uses my drama list, we know their synopsis are sometimes hit or miss, and one
So
this
bad.
one is a hit. This one's definitely really, really well done. It
Yes.
tells you everything you need to know about this drama. So yeah, this drama was directed by the director Ding Zi Guang, and he directed things like Meet Yourself, Find Yourself, and My Amazing Boyfriend. The screenwriter is Wang Xiongcheng, and he directed Meet Yourself, High Venus, The Day of Becoming You, and Find Yourself. And this is like a two screenwriter drama. So the second screenwriter is Xu Qianmo, and she's done Meet Yourself, Go Ahead, and Find Yourself. Now, if you see all three of them, so they're kind of like they've worked
A
together.
team.
Yeah,
They're a
they've worked
team.
together
Yeah.
quite a few times. And the thing that I will say for these three, when they work together, they write characters beautifully. Like they do. So they've just done this a year. It finished up in January. Was it January? January or February? They did drama Meet Yourself, and that is beautiful. It's like set in the outskirts of China. So, very small town kind of life, and it's beautiful found family as well. So these three, when they work together, that you're gonna get really good like found family drama goodness. So yeah, like the screenwriter Wang Xiongcheng is someone that I follow. I love his dramas. Like he writes really, really nicely. I loved both, I've watched High Venus, I've watched The Day of Becoming You, I've watched like pretty much all of his dramas, and there isn't one that I haven't enjoyed yet. So yeah, he's a really good writer. So yeah, that's like the Wonder Team. Those three together do
Wonder
really,
team.
yeah. Those three together do really good work. So I'm always on the lookout for, whenever they're gonna work together. So for the cast, we've got one of my favorites, and that's Tan Song Yoon as Lee Jianjian. Now, there is, so for the first couple of episodes, we've got the little children who were cast, my god, I feel like these kids were cast to perfection against like the older ones. And so Li Jianjian is, as a younger version, is played by Xiao Songhua. And then we have Song Wei Long as Ling Xiao, also known as Big Brother. So if you guys hear us referencing, that's who we mean. And and then the younger version of Ling Xiao is played by Xu Wei Lu. And then we have Zhang Xinchang. He's also known as Stephen Zhang. That's like his English name that he goes by. And he plays He Zichui, who is like one of the hardest names to pronounce.
Names.
Like
Oh
his
my gosh.
name is just like one of those, because I know I'm butchering
What are
it.
they
That is,
saying? I could never get that. I could never
yeah,
catch it.
there's like the Chui sound is like a really different kind of
Mhm.
sound, and I cannot like wrap my
Yeah.
head around how they say it. So I'm just
Yeah.
hoping we're not, I'm not butchering it too much. But so the younger version of He Chui is Shaoli Zenzhen. And then we just have the two dads. We have Ton Song Yan as Li Hai Chao. He, to me, will always be Noodle Dad. Like I have seen
Noodle
this
Dad.
actor,
Okay.
exactly. Like I have seen this actor in like many different dramas, and I have seen him as pretty different characters, and all I can see when I look at him is like Noodle Dad. That is, what I can see him as is like Noodle Dad. So And then we have the police dad. That's, and that is played by the actor Zhang Shi Lin, and his character is Ling He Ping. So that is the main cast. And then this drama was broadcasted on the 10th of May of 2020. And the series was filmed from September 16th, 2019 to December 29th, 2019. So, 3 month, 4 month shoot, which is pretty regular for a Chinese drama. And it was recorded in Xiaomen. So that is the area it was recorded in. So that's like all the little details that that I've got on this drama. So yeah, let's get into the review, shall we? We've got some questions, and we're just gonna bounce off these questions for for this. Now, I'm going to say this, and I know the answer to this question, so it was a bit silly that I wrote it. But this is one of those questions that I tend to ask anyways, but I thought I know the answer to this. And
Yes.
But, so what made you start this drama?
So, how this drama came to me, and actually, I want to mention that when you were on my podcast my podcast earlier this year, at the end, I inquired about your recommendations for like people who are just starting into Chinese dramas. And you gave a nice list of recommendations. And one of them that recommended was Go Ahead. And at that time of us recording, I think I would even say it. I said, like, out of all of the ones you listed, I would probably be the most interested in kind of watching Go Ahead because you kind of described this found family aspect to it. And I was like, oh yeah, that's right. And you said slice of life, I was like right down my alley. And so like in the back of my mind, I had kind of wrote down your recs, but like that was number one. Like if I ever have room or time in my schedule to watch a Chinese drama, I'm gonna probably watch Go Ahead first. I had made up my decision about that. And then one of my K-drama friends, she has also watched a lot of C-dramas, but we were talking, I was telling her like, yeah, if I do watch one, I'm going to probably watch this one called Go Ahead, recommended by Liliana. And she was like, oh yeah, that one's on my list too. So she was like, when you watch it, let me know how it is. And then, I'll decide if I want to watch. I was like, okay, great. But never got around to it. Yeah. Time went by, never found any room in my schedule to watch Go Ahead. But we had talked about after you kind of were on my podcast, like if you ever wanted me to be on yours, I would love to be a part of, an episode of any kind. And so when you reached out to me about this, recording this episode, we were kind of bouncing ideas off of each other. Like, what could we do? Do we want to review, a C drama? And you were kind of give me options, but then at some point I think I was like, what about Go Ahead? Like, go ahead. How about Go Ahead? Because I needed an excuse to force myself. Yes, I said I wanted to watch it. It was on my list, had been on my list since February of this year. And I was like, I gotta squeeze it in. So that is how I ended up watching Go Ahead for the purpose of this episode. But also because I knew I wanted to watch it. If I was gonna watch a C drama, I knew I wanted to start with that one.
It is a really good one to start. I will say this. Go ahead.
I was going to say the other caveat to this is that you mentioned that it's one of your favorites. So I was also quite nervous to watch Go Ahead and record an episode about it because I was like, what if I hate it? What happens then?
Do you know what? And if that was the outcome, then I would be more than happy to discuss it because I feel like it could lead to really good discussions. I feel like even when people disagree on things, it would, it can lead to really good discussions. And like I was mentioning at the beginning of the episode, it would also, I watched it in like that heat of everybody watching it. And I feel like that can influence you and like, like it can sort of, it makes you feel like you've loved it even more because you get all of that, community again, like watching it at the same time, and it amps up your feelings about it, I feel. So like it's always going to be interesting to see somebody watching it when that isn't the case and then like how they feel about it because, it can be very, very different. Also, I feel like this drama is quite special to me just because I met a very dear friend because of this drama, and it was amongst,
the shutdown that is Twitter, the hellhole
Yes,
is Twitter.
yes.
She was tweeting about it, I was tweeting about it, and we kind of like slid into each other's DMs. And then like it's history now. We've known each other for like 3 years. She lives on the other side of the world. She
I
lives
don't
like in
care.
USA. So I haven't even like met her. Like I've
Met
spoke
her.
yeah, like
Exactly.
I've spoken to her on
Exactly.
Zoom. We talk to each other a lot of the time, but I've never met her. But
Exactly.
yeah, so she's a very special person to me. Just I've never met her. Um, not met her in, physical sense. We've
A
seen each
physical sense.
other
In
on
person.
Zoom, like
Yes.
yeah, in person. Like we've
Yes.
talked to each other on Zoom and like FaceTime and that sort of thing. So yeah, and it was because of this drama. And actually, I've got a very, very small Discord server that, I started, and it was because of this drama as well.
Because
Because
of
she
this
was like,
drama.
oh, maybe we should start something, nice, a little community. So we did, and that is it. And a lot of the people that were there hadn't watched Chinese dramas, and this was the drama that I was like, I'll try this one. And then like a lot of new people that started it, like started watching Chinese dramas because of this drama. So I feel like it holds a special place to me. But even saying that, I am more than happy for people to be like, no, I don't like it, or, it's not my cup of tea, or whatever it may be. And I'll be like, okay, cool, let's talk about it. What is it that you don't like? And then we can, agree to disagree and move on. I feel like that's the way to do really, really good, healthy discussions. So yeah.
Yes, I did feel some pressure starting it.
No,
I was like,
no, God, no, don't say
I,
that.
I hope this is do like because the problem was that it was 40 episodes. So I was like, I am really gonna be taking out a lot of my time
Yeah.
to really watch this. So if this and when I watch dramas, especially one that I know that I'm gonna be podcasting, extensively on, like, especially guesting, I'm gonna episode by episode, I'm taking note, like I am
Yeah,
very
yeah.
serious. So I'm committing a lot of time to this.
Hmm.
I just hope that it's worth it in the end.
Let's get it now. Let's ask now.
Yes.
Was it worth it?
So the way that I knew I was going to answer this question if that was going to be what you were going to ask of like, did you like it or not? When I was watching episode 40, because it was 40 episodes, but I know that I read somewhere that they're on the TV version was like 46
Yeah, so
episodes. Was that
basically, there is no difference. It's just the way
okay?
they cut it for TV. They cut the
Got it.
episodes slightly shorter so that they can do
Order.
ad breaks. So,
Um,
yeah, it's 40 episodes online. It's the exact same thing for TV. It's just that theirs is 46 because the episodes are cut slightly different, but
Shorter.
you get the same exact thing. So, yeah, yeah.
So I finished episode 40, that final scene, which is them taking the family portrait
Yeah.
photo. And I don't do this very often. I stood up and gave it a standing ovation in the quiet of my living room by myself. I just stood up and
It
I gave it a
is.
standing. The last time I did that was my liberation notes last year. I was like,
Oh, that is high praise. That is high
that
praise.
I don't do that very often. And the other time before that was Demon Slayer, like season 2 of Demon Slayer, like
Yeah.
standing ovation. So like I don't do that very often. And I was just like, I wanted to talk to you immediately.
Yeah.
I
Glad.
felt my and you were talking about friends that you've made because of your podcast and watching, dramas. My K-drama friend, I keep mentioning her, like same thing. We became friends because of my podcast, basically, and the rest is history. But I immediately called her. I was like, and
You
she's
need
the
to
one who,
watch it.
yes, and I was like, I was telling her throughout. I was like, it's still going okay. Like I would give her check-ins. I was like, episode like 10 would go, and I was like, I think I still like it. I think it's still good. And we were like, I was waiting for the other shoe to drop. I thought I was going to get to like episode 15 and be like, I cannot make it to episode 40. I just know I can't. But I was giving her check-ins like, you know what? I think I still like it. Oh my gosh. I think I kind of love it. Oh my goodness. I think it's amazing. Like all throughout. And then episode 40, I was like standing ovation, called her immediately and was like, that
Watch
was
it.
so good. That was so good. You got to put it on your list. It is definitely on the list. Like you have to watch it. I loved it. I loved it.
I feel like with this one, the story itself isn't like groundbreaking. There's
Nope.
not,
Nope.
the
Nope.
story
It sure isn't.
itself isn't, tight or isn't, that it's not. what makes this drama so special is those five people. It's those five characters and the messages that they bring across of like family and what family means, that it's not blood, it's like how you treat each other, how you care for each other. And it's like this beautiful rendition of like the found family. Now, found family is, I love, it's one of my favorite
One of my
tropes.
favorites as
And
well.
it
One of
can,
my
yeah,
favorite.
and you know
Love.
what? Found family is kind of like akin to what we were talking about. It's like community. It is exactly the same thing.
Exactly.
It's the people
Exactly.
that you choose to be in your life. And I feel like if you surround yourself with a really good, found family, you are set in terms of, just moving through life. And I feel like that's what this drama shows. Like you became so attached to these characters that I was like, I'm more than happy to watch them sitting there just having food and teasing each
Having lunch,
other.
yeah, having dinner together,
Yeah,
eating together. Absolutely.
because like, and
Absolutely.
also it's like the conversations that came out of this drama, like between the parents and between what it means to be a father, what it means to be, a irresponsible mother at that point, what means to ask for forgiveness, what means to earn that forgiveness. And even although they could have done it slightly better, the fact that they touched on, psychological problems and how parents' actions can lead to psychological problems in children and then in adults. I feel like that's such a common theme that we see throughout generations now, that we're talking more and more about, mental health and like generational problems and how that affects the next generation. I feel like this drama really does tap into, quite a few things of that. So I'm always nervous to like recommend it because like I loved it. I did. It's to this day it's still one of my favorite found families that I've watched. But I know it's not a drama for everybody because
Yes.
it's
Yeah,
hard to watch like those scenes with that, with all three mothers. Like all three mothers have
absolutely.
problems,
Absolutely.
and that can be a no-go for some people. So,
Yep.
it is
Yep.
understandable that it isn't going to be for everybody, but it is like a very special drama, I think.
It's very special. And I think the thing that I think one of the things that stood out to me most about this drama was everything you just said, but then also this concept of your family and your kind of personal relationships with people, your interpersonal relationships with people being a part of your identity. And I think a lot of Asian cultures, I mean, I'm just thinking not American culture. I
Yeah.
think it's so much like individual, we're in so much individualistic, but a lot of other cultures place like their identity and value on their role in a family a lot of times. And I think this was a beautiful example of like what that may look like to some people, how you being a father, that is you, like that's something that you pride yourself in, your ability to be a good father to
Yeah.
kids that aren't even your blood, like that is your identity there. And then also you being your mother leaving you and you kind of being adopted into a family and realizing like I have to be a, more of a son
Yeah.
than I would have to be if I was your actual blood son. You know what I mean? Like watching that, like a character focus on being the best son they can be because they feel like they're not a son enough because they're
Mm.
not blood,
Yeah.
things like that. Where it's like your identity is tied to the role that you play in a family. And I just loved exploring that because I feel like that's not, I think it's explored in dramas with not to this depth. I think it
No.
goes a lot deeper. And I loved it. I loved it. I loved it. I loved it. And how that it's all tied to, like you said, your mental health, like you recognizing like my identity is to be a good, a good son or a good father. That's my identity. And then if or my a good mother, and then you're not that, then what does
Then
that
what
make you
are
as a
you?
person?
Yeah.
Yeah, then what are you?
Yeah.
If you're not able to be a good son to your mother who needs you during this time, are you not a good person now because of that? Like
Mm.
going through those thoughts and seeing those characters fight with that and wrestle with that, I ate it up. I was like, wow, this is so much deeper than I think people, I was like, if you don't watch this and don't take some of those kind of moments from it, you're like, you're missing it. You're missing
Yeah.
it. That's so deep. Like there were so many moments I was like, wow, that is so deep, the way that they kind of explored that. And Loved it. I loved it so much.
I
I
think
have to.
I think also it's just one of those parts where I don't know, like even so normally in dramas you get like the cold people and then you get like the sunny
Yes. Yes.
personalities, right?
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
you don't go not as often now, but like in past dramas you wouldn't even go like into detail of like why is she constantly happy? Like that's not an
Yes.
okay
Yeah.
mode for somebody. And I really
Mhm.
enjoyed that although like our female lead, Lee Jun Jan, in this one, she is like the bright personality, she
Yes.
also breaks down and she also leans on
Yes.
and she leans on her dad a lot and her dad like, guides her through a lot of things that's happening in her life. And I feel like when you look at them, Jan Jan is like the recreation of her father. And it's like
Yes.
everything that you can see that warmth and love and support can bring you. She's grown into like a beautiful, well acclimated adult. And it goes
Yes.
to show like how the other two brothers haven't, even though like I'm gonna call him Noodle Dad, even though Noodle Dad has given them like that love and whatnot, it can't take away from like everything they've kind of suffered, before they got to him, if that makes sense.
Exactly.
So
Absolutely.
yeah.
And I, yeah, I don't know if there's anything that this drama didn't do too well. Like I said, I know you mentioned like the mental health kind of
Mm,
discovery and like the discussion, like they could have done a better job. But I actually think the way that they did it made so much sense at the same time. Like I
yeah.
feel like the way that it didn't go too deep into it, because sometimes when you, even at their age, like they're pushing their 30s, and they are still unsure of like where they
Yeah.
really are mentally, their mental state, and how it's kind of very surface level for them, recognizing some of the things that they're dealing with, their mental health. And so I just really love that, where it's like so kind of unfinished. You know what I mean? It's like the journey has just begun, the healing has just begun by the end. And I'm like, what did it not do well? I really was like, I don't really know
That's
what it
actually
didn't do
that's actually a really good point. I hadn't thought about it that way, about like how as adults, as human
well.
beings in general,
As
we're
human beings.
constantly growing, constantly
Yes,
changing,
yes,
constantly learning. If you aren't doing all three or at least one of those, you're like stagnated in life and that isn't healthy. Like we're
that's scary.
constantly changing. Like stagnation isn't a place where we want to be at. So I feel like I hadn't thought about it in that way, that yes, they're in their 30s, but they are constantly learning, constantly growing. So I feel like actually thinking about the ending and thinking about like how that's just the beginning of their
That's
next
the beginning.
stage in
Just the
life. So
yes.
that is actually, thinking about it that way, that is like beautifully done in that aspect where it's just like the
Yes, it's
beginning
so
of the
good.
next stage. So yeah.
So good. That's just like
Oh.
this drama blew me away. It kind of sort of blew me away.
I'm so glad. I'm so glad. I'm so glad. There's like a lot of little details in it, because like
Yes.
what's good about this drama, a lot of it comes from the dialogue. I feel there's a lot of like, I have, when we come to the end, I have quite a few, like just a few quotes that are some of my favorites that I just want to share. But I feel like the dialogues in this, the themes are great, but then like the dialogues that come from this drama are just so so good. They're just so good.
So good. So
Um
good. And I
so
think
so
that's a
yeah.
and I think that's a good I think this type of dialogue, the why we value it so much in this type of drama, is this kind of slice of life feel that it gives.
Mm.
Like a lot of your life is sometimes just sitting and talking to people.
Yeah.
And if you're making a story or a drama that has this as like the kind of core of it, you have to have good dialogue. That's inexcusable. That is going to be a lot of the scenes. There's just kind of like these characters having these moments of dialogue, and you can see they put so much effort into that, knowing that that was really like the crux of the story. Because like you said, the plot itself isn't brand new, isn't anything like to write home about, but like the smaller details of this type of story, that they've put a lot of energy in that, and you can see it.
I feel like that's a theme for both these screenwriters and this director, because
Ah,
I've just watched Meet Yourself, and a lot of the conversations had are so important. They talk about like the how a relationship, between a man and a woman should be, like in terms of it should be supportive, it should be, you have these characters that are saying, oh no, women should stay at home, and there's the male lead clearly being like, no, that's not how it should be, like women should be able to do whatever they want to do. And there's like really important conversations had, and there's conversations about um skills not being passed down to the next generation because the interest just isn't there anymore.
there.
And
Yeah.
there's really really good conversations had, like, and conversations between generations, which I found really really interesting. There's like the grandmas having conversations with our female lead, and it brings really really good topics about. So yeah, that I feel like I loved Meet Yourself. The story there is also very simple. Basically, our female lead, something kind of like happens to her, and she lives in this very fast paced, gotta, do work up the ladder, gotta, buy a house, buy a car, gotta save money, gotta, very fast paced city life. And something kind of happens and shakes her for a little bit, and she's kind of like, I'm taking a sabbatical out of my job and I'm going to the countryside for 3 months. And it's her story, and her story there, and what she learns, because she has to slow down. Like, life there just
Mhm.
doesn't work at the same pace as city life does. And it's all the conversations that come out of it. Again, story setup very very simple, but it's all about like the
Simple.
characters and the conversations had. And Go Ahead is exactly the same. So
Same.
like, if also, I think one thing that is very very important is like the five main people, the five main
Mhm.
cast. If their chemistry hadn't been on point between all of them,
No,
this wouldn't work.
it wouldn't work. It wouldn't work at all. It
No.
wouldn't work at all. They felt genuinely related to me. Like they
Mm.
felt like they had like like the watching of a family forming is only in found family dramas, right? So like usually when you go into a story and story is about a family and it's a grandmother and it's the father and then children, like the family's already established. Like we
Yeah,
don't
yeah, yeah.
watch that family become a family. But in a story like this where you're watching a family become a family, it's even more convincing that they're a family. Like
Yeah,
we
yeah, yeah.
watched you become a family. So there's no way you can't tell me you're not family. So like there's like this early scene in kind of first couple episodes where I think it's our little bro and his aunt who constantly is
Mm.
forcing on him to like, do right by your kind of father,
Yeah,
noodle
yeah. New
dad,
dad, dad. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yes, you need to do right by him and do everything he needs and more because like you shouldn't even really be here kind of thing. And that
Yeah.
pressure, of course, being put on him. But like she does this in front of Noodle Dad and he completely breaks down. Like I mean, he was drinking, but he just
Yeah.
completely breaks down. It's like, I'm so sick and tired of people telling me
Saying,
yes, saying that
I'm
they're
not these
not
dad's kids.
I'm
Yeah.
not their dad. I'm not their dad. Every time you put this on him and make him feel like he has to do more to prove to be my son, you're making me feel like I'm not his father, which
Yeah.
I am. I'm doing everything I possibly can to be his father. And as the person watching, I'm like, absolutely. Like I saw what he has done for him already. That is his dad. Like you can't convince me otherwise. So I just really loved watching the formally, like watching a family form, like
Yeah.
seeing that being kind of growing and then connecting and just like, oh, like I said, chemistry. If they didn't have that chemistry, that family chemistry, it would have never worked. It was wonderful. It was
Yeah.
wonderful.
And there's actually a later scene that we come back to, and they're saying, oh, how can he be their dad or whatever it may be. And Noodle Dad just says something along the lines of, you don't get to tell me what a family should
Yes,
look like. And I'm
yes,
like,
yes,
that is beautiful, because that is
yes.
true. That is so true. And also, I have
So true.
always been of the opinion that a dad is someone who shows up. It isn't necessarily your, blood. It isn't necessarily your biological dad. It isn't necessarily your biological mom. a parent
Mhm.
or a mum and a dad, or two dads or two mums, or whatever it may be, whoever's taking care of you, that's who your parents are. Because, showing up for that kid is like the most important thing that a parent can do. So, he's fulfilling that down to a T. He shows up, he dotes on them, he, tells them off when they need to be told off.
When
But,
they yes.
when they need to listen to that harder choice or whatever, he tells them how it is. So I just feel like he's like the at that point when I was watching this drama, I hadn't really watched any kind of like good dads in dramas. Dads tend to be portrayed like really badly in dramas. And I'm like, this is the best dad that I have ever watched in a drama. Like, I just feel like he's supportive, and I almost feel like so whenever you watch a drama that has a mum and a dad, typical mum dad scenario, the mum tends to be like the one that's doting and caring, and the dad tends to be, the reason of, law, whatever. But you have no mums that are doting and caring in this drama, so that falls on the dad, and he just does it so beautifully. So yeah.
And one of your questions is kind of MVP character.
Yeah, who's your MVP character? Like,
And
who?
I was gonna say obvious Noodle Dad, right? I was like, obviously it's Noodle Dad. Like for everything you just said, I was like, oh, obviously Noodle Dad. However, I felt like my MVP like kept changing throughout the kind of like
Yeah.
throughout the drama in a way. Like in the first half, I really have to say it was definitely Noodle Dad. And then there was this moment where Jean,
Yeah.
she like had her growth, like her development, like her becoming like, beautiful, have this beautiful career that she starts, like she's just like,
Mm.
oh my gosh, she's living and thriving without
Yeah.
her brothers. So I just really looked up to her at that point. But then I think the real person, like after all of it was said and done, my favorite like character actually ends up being little bro.
Really?
And
A lot of people go for little brother.
little bro, it's definitely my fave because he's to me in the family structure, he's a middle child and I'm also a
Yeah.
middle child and I
Yeah.
have middle child syndrome and I really believe in it. And so I think that was one of my connections with him was like he felt like a middle child in the family structure. But then also I think even when he was a little one, like the children actors, oh my gosh, were so good. But like his little when he was a little boy, how he was just so adorable, so sweet. But I saw the pressure on him. Like I think that's what got me. Like watching him grow through that pressure of like wanting to be the best son to someone who he felt like,
Was
I have to
worthy.
prove like yes. I loved watching his process through that. And I loved his growth. I think and I liked how he was kind of also all over the place at times, like with him trying to run this this bakery,
Oh
but
my
like
god.
also not making any money from it. I was just like, someone, guys, help him out. Please help him out. But like, I love that he was not, he was all over the place, but all at the same time, he was all about his family. He loved him through and through. I loved his kind of that moment when he was trying to understand how he felt about his little sister.
Mm.
He was thinking it was something else when it really wasn't that. It was just his desire and need to be a part of the family registry.
Yeah.
Like he was like, I just need to be a part of this
He
family
just wants to
officially.
belong. And I mean, who
Yes,
doesn't want to
yes.
belong? That's all
Who
he
doesn't want
wants.
that?
He
That's
just
all
wants
he
to belong
wants.
somewhere.
He was my absolute favorite. I loved him. I even loved how he was able to be okay with their relationship that the relationship that formed and the romantic relationship that formed between our quote unquote siblings,
Yeah.
like how that he just kind of accepted that and moved on and just kept living his life. And I loved when Big Brother's sister came, when she came, when and how he took her in a
They
way
kind
and
of
kind
take
of
her, yeah, they take her in under their wing, don't they?
I just loved everything. I loved everything about his character. So I think at the end of the day, he ended up being my kind of MVP. But I did value so many of the other characters throughout like different points of the drama for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah. I think it's one of those where you just get attached to watching them grow as
Yeah.
characters. And also,
Yeah.
I feel like we touched on it briefly, but the kids who played the younger versions of our three
Yes,
main characters, they were brilliant. Like,
they were
I don't
amazing.
know. I could see the adults as those kids, like the
Easily,
mannerisms and everything. You
easily.
could see them as each other, and it was brilliant,
I
brilliant.
was like, how did they
So,
do that? I was like, this is amazing that they were even able to do that. Because you're right, the way they were able to portray the mannerisms from these little children actors, and it kind of mapped on beautifully to how they kind of grew up. I was like, wait, how is that? Did they study the child actors? Or it's just that the characters that they had written on the page were so thorough that the actors were able to just like
pick up.
really grab hold. Exactly. So I think it's coming down to the writers for sure. A testament to the writing,
Now I
definitely.
know, I know Tan Song Yoon and Stephen Zhang, both of them brilliant actors. So that's Jan Jan and Little Brother.
And yes,
They are brilliant,
amazing. They were
brilliant
amazing.
brothers. I mean,
Mhm.
actors. Like I've seen them in various other things. Song Wei Long, so he's older brother. Now he's arguably out there. A lot of people say he's just like a pretty face with not a lot. And I could see that because a lot of his other dramas aren't necessarily like his best work. So I don't know if this was a case of writer and right director, just taking him under their wing and kind of like making him do, because I feel like he did a pretty good job in this drama.
I think so too. I absolutely
So
I could, now that you've mentioned it though, like what okay, so I will say this, something I did notice. I think I noticed it because of the acting, and it felt new.
wooden.
Not wooden, but like new. And so when I
Okay.
looked up his age, I was like, oh, he's young. So I
Mm,
realized like it could just be that where he's just kind of like, he's a newer actor, so he just doesn't have as much experience. And that's what I'm
mm.
reading on the screen. But I didn't think he was, I mean, the character fit the woodenness. So I
Yeah,
couldn't say it was too wooden. I was like,
yeah.
that woodenness worked in his
Worked
favor
in his
because of
favor.
the
Yeah,
character.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So I couldn't be mad at it. So I think he actually did a good job portraying the character that was there. You can tell he did a good job doing that, but I could see that if he didn't have that character and he was playing something totally different, where the woodenness would probably remain. And
Yeah,
we
it
were
wouldn't
like, wait a
work.
second, this doesn't
So
fit this character.
he comes from like a modeling background. So
Modeling.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
you can
So he
tell. I
was
mean, he's a beautiful face.
yes.
Beautiful face. You're
Yes.
absolutely right. Beautiful face. But the acting in comparison to Little Bro and John John, like definitely, I could see so much. Not a, I didn't want to say like a divide, but like I could
But
see
there
the,
is. Yeah, there
yeah,
is.
I could see the difference. I could
There
see the
is.
difference.
Those two, they are both older. I
Older.
think
Yes, I
yeah,
noticed
so
that. They're,
yeah,
they're so much older than I thought.
Tan Song Hyun is in her 30s, and I think Stephen Zhang is probably hitting his 30s as well. So, but they have acted in a lot of things and they are pretty experienced.
Very,
And especially for Stephen Zhang, he's done a bunch of different dramas. Like he's meddled in a lot of different things.
range. He has
So
range.
yeah, he has
Yeah.
he has a lot of range. So yeah, both of those are pretty experienced. They are very good actors for me anyways. I love them both. For Song Wei Long, he was kind of like I said, he this was the first thing I saw him in. So I was like at the time I was like, "Oh,
Mhm.
yeah, okay, he's okay,
Yeah.
But now that I've watched more from him, I'm like, okay, I get it
Uh-oh.
now. I get it. I
Uh-oh.
get it. So
You
this
get
has
it.
actually become like a bit of a theme because with last year, Love Between Fairy and Devil, I was like, I didn't really like Dylan Wang. Like, I'd watched him a couple of times before, but I then watched him in Love Between Fairy and Devil, and I was like, my God, he can act. So he's been like improving slowly, whereas with Song Wei Long, I haven't seen yet that
Mm,
improvement. So I'm hoping that, he's got a couple of projects upcoming. Who knows? if he'll
Maybe.
he'll
Yeah.
work better or not. But yeah, I'm willing to give like actors a chance if they're willing to work and improve their craft. So if they're actively working on it, and you can see like with every drama them getting better and better, then they're actively working on it. So yeah.
Yeah. But I think what you said earlier though, I think it might also just be the team that he was a part of, like brought out the best that could possibly have gotten from him. I think they got the best, and everything else you would have to have that same kind of perfect atmosphere for him to kind
Mhm.
of nurture more. And I don't know, maybe he's not going to keep getting that going
I
forward,
feel
but like,
like, yeah, I feel like with Meet Yourself, which is the other drama that all three of these have worked on, and actually, they have done a drama called Find Yourself. So all three of them
so
worked
meet
on
yourself,
it.
find yourself.
I know,
Hmm.
it's like it's all, yeah. And Find Yourself, the main character is Song Wei Long. So Big Brother plays the main male
Oh,
lead in that. I haven't watched it. I have heard
oh,
mixed reviews about it. I
okay,
have heard
okay, okay.
mixed reviews. I am gonna go in, like one day I am gonna go in and watch it just because I'm curious to see.
Yeah.
I believe Find Yourself was done before Go Ahead, I think.
Oh.
It might be a before, or I can't quite remember if it's a before or an after. I'm just gonna quickly
Mhm.
check. Um, but yeah, it's the same director, same two writers. Um, and it oh no, it's same year, 2020. So same year.
Same
It was
year.
released in 2020.
But what
Uh
about like maybe the at his like the experience of, our actress maybe helped as well, and go ahead, maybe whoever he's
maybe.
kind of working across
It
and
does. So I was just checking up the MDL
rating.
page for Find Yourself, and it's got an 8.1 on there. So that's
Definitely
pretty
not the
good.
same as Go Ahead though, because Go Ahead is like a 9 point, it's
Oh yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
nine point
Go
nine
ahead.
nine 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 across
Go
the board.
ahead. Go ahead is like one of the highest rated Chinese dramas. But I feel
As
like
it
it's
should be.
because
As it should
Find
be.
Yourself is like an office romance as well, so that's not gonna hit for
That's
everybody
different.
quite
Yeah, that's
like
yeah.
um but yeah, I don't know. That it'll be interesting to see. One day I will go and check it out. But for example, for Meet Yourself, which is the other one that they've also same director, same two writers, they have got two of the like best actress and actress. So the female lead for that is Liu Yifei. She is the actress who played Mulan in the Disney adaptation. So that's her. And then the male lead is Li Xian. He's a brilliant actor as well. So that's Meet Yourself. It's got like the perfect of
Perfect
everything. Yeah,
everything.
yeah, yeah.
Everything.
Yeah.
Cast, director, writing. It's like it should
Not
be the
that
best of the
not
best.
not that Go Ahead doesn't, because I still like Go Ahead slightly more, just because I
Or
just yeah, yeah, yeah. Just because I just absolutely love the like family unit from this drama. But I feel like both of them are really strong dramas. So yeah. Another one to add to your list, Lola.
I'm definitely gonna add it. I've already looked into it, I'm gonna be honest. I had already kind of did my own research on like what else
Yeah,
cast
yeah.
has done and what else the
Yeah.
writer and directors have done, because I was so blown away by Go Ahead. I was like, I have to get more. And then
Mm,
seeing that they worked together, like they moved together to do other things, I was like,
yeah.
oh, without no brainer. I'm definitely gonna have to watch one of these.
Mm,
But I don't know. I wasn't sold, I think, on Find Yourself, I think. I don't
yeah.
think I was sold. So I
I
do
haven't
have another, but not Find Yourself.
No, there is. So Meet Yourself is the other one, but also The Day of Becoming You. It's not the same director, it's different director, but it is one of the writers, and it's
Mhm.
also Little Brother is the male lead in that, and you'll see him as
Okay,
a
that's
You'll see also it's only 24 episodes. So that one is a shorter one, and it's kind of like a swap body drama.
I did look this up. I watched the trailer of this one.
It's
I loved it
hilarious.
because I love
Yeah.
body switching, because it's kind of like fish out of water, which is another of my favorite tropes, where you're
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
having to pretend to be someone that you're not, so that, love it. So I had already thought about that when I was like, should I watch
You
this one?
should. You definitely should.
Okay,
Definitely
I'm
see.
excited.
It's very funny, and also it's like night and day because little brother over there plays kind of like this cold male lead, and it's
I
like
would love to
night
see
and
that.
day,
I would love to
night and
see that
day.
because I loved how all over the place and cutesy kind of at
Yeah, yeah,
times is
completely
going.
different.
I love that. Okay, this is great. That's cool.
Just more, just more recommendations. We've gone off track, but that's
Oh, so
fine.
sorry.
No,
So
no,
sorry.
no, no, no. You're fine. Do you know why? I feel like when I listen to your guys' podcasts, so I was listening to Jess from the Debug, and I've recorded with her plenty of time. Like I've recorded for her podcast, she's recorded with me, and she has like a way more structured way of recording.
Mhm.
And when she came on my podcast, I completely led her astray and we were all over the place. And I'm like, it's me. I do
It's
this. I
you.
bring
You're the
this
problem.
chaos to people.
Like
But
it's okay. I don't mind it. I love that. I always say that a lot of times with my podcast, I do structure because it's just me talking. A lot of times, so
yeah,
it's like
yeah,
I
yeah.
feel like I can't be too rambling, but I do fit that in a lot of my rambling. But I do like it to feel free flowing, like as in
Mm.
like we're just going with the flow. If we
Yeah.
go off, that's us going with the flow, and that's fine. That's
That's
absolutely
me. That's me. Like I often just have like a couple of bullet points and I just go
exactly
like with that. I
same,
can't do it any
same,
other way. I can't do it
same.
any other way.
Me too. Me
But
too.
I go off track so many times. But I've reached the point where I just accept it. Like people have
Yes.
listened. I'm almost like at the 1 year mark. At this point, people know what they're getting when they
They know
click
what
on
they're
an
getting.
episode.
They know. It's in that, and that's what they're coming back for. If you were to have changed that or been something totally different, then they wouldn't be listening, right? So
Yeah.
I think it works beautifully, and like I appreciate it, and like I feel more comfortable
Yeah,
when
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
recording with something, and it's like we can just take it
Chat.
as it,
Yeah.
it's a lot more comfortable.
So we've kind of gone through some of the other points, so I'm just going to skip ahead a few and let's talk about what were some of your favorite scenes in Go Ahead. And I'm sure there's probably a few.
There's tons. I loved everything about the kind of opening of the story with all the children actors.
Mm.
Like I loved like all of those episodes. It was just so good because I think I was loving the performances so well.
Yeah.
So like that was really going to stand out to me, and that was obviously the beginning of the drama. So knowing that it had that up front was a good sign. I was like, okay, they already got me. So I was very, 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 very pleased with the opening. But the very first kind of major scene for me that really was just like, wow, was that breakdown scene I was talking about with Noodle Dad. Like when he had that
Yeah.
moment after he got drunk, they were supposed to be having a celebratory time and he kind of just like snapped. I thought it was beautiful. So that was definitely the kind of first scene of mine that I was just like,
Mm.
wow, I love this. And I think I
Yeah.
just love breakdown scenes very a lot
Yeah,
because
yeah, yeah, yeah.
you'll see as I keep going through my favorites, they're like all of the breakdown scenes
All
are
the
usually
breakdowns.
the ones.
There's a few.
There's a few of them, and I
There is.
loved every single one of them. And I want to say that I think, and this is gonna because I was gonna say his that breakdown, little Big Bro's breakdown at the end, like around
Yeah.
episode 30, I think, when he was talking, to his mom
And
and
he just
who had
lets it
abandoned,
rip. Yeah.
lets it go, and he tells her, and he says, I think this might be one of the quotes like that were my favorite. I don't have it exactly, but when he tells her like I was doing all that I could so that I can give all that I can to those who never abandoned me.
Yeah.
Like I want to give them everything and more. And I was like, that sums up his character for me and why he was my MVP. Like he was that person where it's like I see the people in my life who have done so much for me, and I just want to give back all of that. And I love that. I mean, I love that. I
Mm.
love that. Another one that I don't think we've talked about is the character, like her friends. Jen
Oh yeah, like yeah, her group of
Yes,
friends.
yes. And one of her friends, and I'm trying to think of her name now. I don't think I
Uh,
can pronounce it. But the one who
fine.
isn't the former child actor, not the former child actor friend, the
The
other
other
one who they
one.
met when they met, and she used to like Little Big Bro, and then she starts liking Big Bro.
I'm
Like
just trying to think. I'm just going to go through the cast, see if I can remember their name. So we've got, it's either going to be Chi Ming Wei. Yeah, it's going to be Chi Ming Wei because Tang San is
not
the
her.
China
Yes,
side. Yeah, she's the child actress, so it's got to be Chi Ming Wei.
She also had a beautiful breakdown scene to me as well, because her mother is very oppressive and kind
Yeah,
of, and so like she has this moment where she kind of like lets it all out, like I did these things behind your back anyway, like you thought I was doing these things, doing being the perfect student and child to you, but I was just doing things behind your back because I was so afraid of you, and she just kind of finally let her mom have it. So I think all of those breakdowns, which those were my three main ones, were like, to me, amazing performances and just really got me. And I have to say, I also loved a lot of the scenes with the three siblings, like even when they were children, but definitely
yeah,
as they were older. Because there was a moment where I could say was my least favorite of the drama. This moment of when they reunite after the two brothers have come back,
yeah,
after being away abroad, for so long. And then there's just this awkwardness between all of them, which was natural and understood, but for me it was torturous because I was just like, I want them to just be, happy and getting to know each other again as adults, but they were like fighting it in a way. And it was so stressful for me watching. So I was like, I know this isn't them. They want to,
yeah.
they
I
want to be,
think I think there was like in those scenes, I remember like I rewatched a couple and I was rewatching those scenes specifically of them like reuniting and coming
yes,
back together. And it is very awkward, but
it's so,
especially for like Jian Jian because
yeah,
she has grown and she has developed. Whereas little brother and older brother, they're kind of like stagnated in terms of their growth because all they wanted to do was to come back. Whereas Jian
yes,
Jian accepted that at the time they weren't going to come back. And she kind of like moved along with her life. She
yes,
created a life for herself outside of her brothers, whereas they kind of didn't. They kind of like were doing everything to sort of come back to her and to like the family unit. So I feel like that awkwardness was always going to be there because they diverged. Their paths completely outgrew each other and they just didn't know who they were as adults and as people. Like in their minds, they were the people that, I think it's like 9 years or whatever that they're apart.
yes,
That's who they were, you know, to them at that point, but that's not who specifically she is anymore. And there is actually a beautiful scene with her and her dad after they kind of like
yes,
come back and they're talking about it and she's talking it through and she is trying to put on this brave face, but she's angry and she's hurt and she has
so,
all of these feelings pent up that, from them just leaving her without explaining anything, which was always the major problem. If they had explained to her what was happening, she would have been fine. Like she would have found a way of keeping them connected. But that wasn't the case. They kind of like didn't explain to her what was happening. So I felt like that scene with her and her dad, and she just lets her guard completely down and she breaks, with her dad, and her dad sees through her and he's like, she needs me right now. And it's like it's one of the most beautiful scenes I've ever watched. It's like this unconditional love just enveloping
yes,
her and
yes,
her just letting everything go. And you can physically see everything come out of her body. And it's like it's a beautiful scene. So that's one of my favorite scenes that comes out of that, awkwardness and or
yes,
that situation of them meeting back up again. So yeah, and you can see like how stagnated they were, that they even chose careers that were,
tied to
with her.
her when she was
Yeah.
younger. Yeah, when they were younger. And I loved, like, I think you calling that out was one of the things that I really appreciate about this story, because it did like explore the way that, you know, numbers, like an age does not determine when you grow up
Yeah.
necessarily, or when you have become who you think you are supposed to be, or who you're becoming, or whatever. So it thought it was really great to show the contrast between someone like her when she was younger. She just like would hold onto their arms. And one of the things I think she even would say was like, oh, when I get older, I'm not going to do anything. My brothers are just going to sit and take care of me. Like that was something she even said when she was younger.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And then all of a sudden, we see her be the one that's like, actually, I could take care of my brothers if I needed to be. Like that's what I loved. And then in comparison, you see these brothers, like you said, when they were abroad, they were really just trying to get back. And in trying to get back, they weren't thinking about growing themselves at all.
No.
They were survival mode. They were like, I'm just trying to survive, and I'm surviving just so I can return back to her.
Mm.
And that's not going to grow you as a person. Like that, it's just going to keep you alive. Like that's all they needed
Yeah.
was the motivation to stay alive, really. But they didn't grow, they didn't develop at all. So when they did reunite, it turned into her looking at these people that like are looking at her as someone that she's no longer. She's like, I'm not that
Yeah.
little girl. You
Girl
guys
anymore
have,
now.
yeah, I'm not her
But
anymore.
they are
You're the
still
ones who are the
them.
same.
Yeah.
Yes, you're the ones that are the same. I'm not. And because of that, I need you guys to kind of like let me show you that. And I think
Yeah.
that's the awkwardness, was that they were trying to still force on her something that she
She
wasn't,
isn't.
and she was needing them to see something
Yeah.
differently. And it was so hard to watch
There's
though, because I miss them being so close together. I
mm,
really did. So it was a hard time to watch, but it was very understandable. Like it
yeah.
made so much sense that they had to go through that kind of relearning each other.
Yeah. And there's actually a really beautiful quote, and I didn't write down who it was, but just by the gist of it, I know it's probably like a Noodle Dad kind of quote, because it's like it sounds like him. And I wrote down, and it fits perfectly with what you were saying about like growing up. And the quote is, people do grow up at once. What does it mean? It means that you're an adult in legal sense on your 18th birthday, but it doesn't mean you've grown up. The true growing up is coming in a flash. No one knows except yourself. Your mind will change. You will feel the weight of life. At that moment, you grow up without anyone noticing. That moment, it can be the next second, tomorrow, the day after tomorrow, 10 or 20 years later, your whole life changes. And it's like, it's such a beautiful sense. Like that quote, it's like they were saying, I think it was one of them turned 18. I can't remember
I
what
think
scene.
I actually, it's Big Bro who says it.
Is it? See, I knew it. Like
Yes,
I
yes,
thought it was a Noodle
Big Bro.
Dad quote. Like I
It's Big
cannot. I could.
Bro.
I wrote it
Yes.
down. Did not write it where it was from or who said it. But it's like, see, it's one of those scenes where you kind of think, yeah, actually, that makes so much sense because
So much sense.
at 18, everybody just expects you to
You're
know
adult.
life.
You're
You're an
adult.
adult. And that quote is such a beautiful quote of them saying, yes, you're an adult in the legal age, but that doesn't mean you're an adult
At
emotionally or
all.
you're an adult, ready to handle life as it is. So I feel like that is one of my favorite quotes of the whole drama, because it's so true. Both of the brothers, they turned 18, but they were
Yes.
not adults. They were still
At
little
all.
lost kids. Like that's what I feel they were, and all they wanted was to come home, and that's yeah.
So this isn't a question on our list, but I was going to bring this up. Like we haven't talked about the mothers.
Oh
And
God, yes.
I was wondering if we should just kind of briefly touch
We
on them,
should. We
because
probably should. We probably should. So to me, all the mothers are horrible.
I know it's rough. It was so rough. It was
I
even like the banding met like that happened in the first first couple episodes of like mothers just legit walking away from their
mm,
child, like just in while their child's standing there, they're just like with their suitcase walking away. It was just mind blowing to me. I thought it was like I'm like, why? How is this possible? But what I liked about it was that I feel like you were saying, usually the story is about the mother being the nurturing,
mm,
caring one, and the fathers are always the ones that walk away, that just
yeah,
disappear, or they're so deadbeat that it'd be better off they were dead, that kind of thing. But in this case, it's like no, it's the mothers that are legit the worst. They are not there for their kids. They completely abandon them. They walk right out of their lives, and yet we're supposed to kind of, as the story develops, we're supposed to go along with the children returning to these mothers and these,
mm.
and accepting these mothers. Excuse me? They're supposed to accept them all of a sudden? I don't think so.
I don't like any of it. Like, so Big Brother's mother is the worst out of all three
The
of them.
worst. The
But,
worst.
but, and this isn't an excuse. It's not an excuse. mentally, she was not in the place to be a mother at that stage. She didn't grieve properly. She didn't, she needed to be in counseling, in therapy, lots of therapy, because
Lots.
at that place and time, after losing her little kid, she doesn't know. Technically, the guilt needs to lie with her and not with Big Brother, because she left them
Absolutely.
alone. She left them alone, and she left them there for an accident to happen. Like,
Mhm.
you're leaving two kids alone. That was your choice. So even before that had happened, she already had like
Issues.
questionables.
She
Yeah.
mothering, yeah, and it was like she's a questionable mother in general, since
Yeah.
like the cause of her daughter's death is really her running off to go gamble, I believe, is the
Yeah.
story. Is that she locked them at home, and the reason why she died is because she was choking,
Yeah,
and
in
Big
the
Bro
air.
couldn't get
Yeah, yeah. Couldn't get
yeah,
to
because it
her.
was yeah, it's like that was from the very beginning. Before we even meet her, like her backstory is like mothering questionable from the start. So she definitely had mental health issues prior. And it
Mm.
could be tied to her marriage.
Not
Dad,
being, yeah.
police dad was never there. He
No,
was never at home.
no.
He was never at home. So, there were some things that were just all wrong from the start with that family. And, Big Bro was taking the brunt of it.
Yeah. But then you go to, like, say, little brother's mother,
Mhm.
and her story is kind of understandable. Like, she does walk away, but she walks away for a very specific reason. She can't take care of him at that time, and she
Yes.
has these
Yes.
people like following her and whatnot. So there is a lot to her story. I've always thought, have they redeemed her enough for her to, like, come back into the fold? And I feel like for her, it's a work in progress. She has started that journey, and her and little brother have kind of like started that journey of healing together.
Hmm.
So I feel like at least she's on the right path to,
Hmm.
and it's not like she abandoned her child by
He
herself.
did
She
it.
left
Yes.
him with
Yes.
someone who
Yes.
she could see would treat him, like a child. So
Yes.
I guess there's some merit there,
I completely forgave little brother's mother. Completely
Mm.
forgave her. Like it was easy for me, and I don't because I completely agree with what you just said. But I think I forgave her because I feel like the person that who really need to forgive her was our little bro,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
I think he technically never needed to forgive her. I think he always, in the back of his mind, he still just cared and loved her. He just wanted
yeah.
her back in his
He
life.
just
So when
wanted
she
his
did,
mom. That's all
yeah,
he
he just
wanted. He
wanted his
just wanted his
mom.
mom.
So yeah, so I felt like I didn't have to forgive her because he was like, as
Mm.
long as she returns, I'm happy, and I think that's what I was okay with. I think, and then he needed to know from her that he wasn't abandoned. She didn't just say, I don't want you as a child anymore. I think what happened was like she had to go to jail. Like she literally did
Yeah, yeah,
time.
yeah,
I
yeah,
was like, I can't be your mother right now.
yeah,
So I feel like that was all he needed to know was like, hey, she didn't actually abandon me. She
yeah.
just could not physically be my
I
mother during
think
that time.
like her biggest error was not explaining to her
Not
child.
explaining.
And I
It made
get
no sense.
it. I get it. Like, there's that
I
embarrassment there, and there's that, but I feel like it would have been better to have explained it rather than having
ab-
him feel like his mother abandoned him, that he wasn't worthy of being with his mother. So I feel like, that would have been the lesser of two evils, which is just tell the
honest.
truth.
Yes,
So just be
be honest.
honest.
Yeah, and I
So,
love though that Noodle Dad like really calls her out on all of that. Like
mm,
he's the reason I think she was able to come to this realization of like all the errors of her ways. Like he broke it down to her like you have to tell him. Like you can't
yeah,
just let him continue to believe like you just threw him to the side of the road. Like you did not. You had a real reason, legitimate reason to not be there in his life. That's not because you didn't want him. That was for another reason. He needs to know that. And again, why Noodle Dad is the best character ever is because he was the one that everyone really had to go to kind of get, their life together. Like he's the one who saw through everyone.
yeah.
He could read people easily. Like he read them so well.
And what I
and he was able
find,
to solve them out.
just pigging back off your comment, what I find really interesting is that so in his generation, whether it be to the police dad, whether it be to Big Brother's mum, whether it be to Little Brother's mum, like Noodle Dad is the sounding board, as he should
Sounding
be,
board.
because
Yes,
he's
he's the only sound
wise.
person.
He's
He's
the
the only
only
sound
sound person, and he's the only competent parent.
competent.
So,
Only one.
as he should be, the sounding board. But what I found really interesting was that then when you move to the kids, you see that John is like the sounding board for the two brothers. And
For the
even
two
for her
brothers.
friends,
Friends.
a
Yes.
lot of the time,
Yes.
she's the sounding board, just like her dad was. And I feel like, it just really shows she's her father's daughter through and through.
Daughter.
And
Yes.
it's like, it's so obvious. But even her mother, like, I feel like that was such a sad story because she had to choose between having that child or staying alive, basically. It was like one or the other. And
Yep.
there was like there was still conversations had of like Noodle Dad saying, is this fair for you to be
Is it fair?
like, you are condemning this child to grow up without a mother. And I feel like she was only able to do that because she knew what kind of man she had
Yes.
married.
Yeah, like I
Because
know what kind of father she
otherwise she
had.
wouldn't. Like,
Yes,
she knew she
absolutely.
would want to bring this child into the world as like her last legacy. So yeah, I felt that like
And
that
I
was still beautiful.
And the other thing I do like about Noodle Dad as a character, tying into all of that, is like I something that I just personally have a hard time with are like perfect characters. Like
Mm.
characters where it's like nothing, they can do no wrong, everything is great about them, they're perfect, they're beautiful. And I felt like there could have been the case for Noodle Dad, but there was this level to him of like, and I think Police Dad points it out a lot. It was like he could be a little bit like a pushover in a way,
Yeah.
like to some extent. And so he wasn't a perfect character in that, like
No.
sometimes you're letting people, walk over you when you shouldn't, and you're not, the most wise sometimes if you let these people do treat you that kind of way.
Mm.
And then there were other times when he would completely prove us wrong. He's like, I'm not a pushover, like when Little Bro's dad came back into his life, he was like, no, you're
You're
not
not
about to
taking
just
my kid away. What are
you're
you
not
talking
taking my
about? I
son.
loved it.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I love that. So I was, and even Police Dad was shocked. He was like, "Wait, where did this come from? I've never seen you like this before." So I'm like, I just love that his character did not, for me, become this kind of like really monotone character where it was just like, oh, of course he has the right thing to say. Of
Yeah.
course he's always going to be the best, the perfect, everything. There were times where he would be a little bit not incompetent, but it was like you're being a little pushover there, or you're
Mm.
letting someone say something you shouldn't really believe them, and even with him falling kind of in love with Little Bro's mom, like how that was really kind of awkwardly and cutely
Yeah,
done. Like
yeah,
I
yeah.
love everything about that. So yeah, he's just another
I
testament to
think I think for him, what it is whenever it was like, the grandmas and the aunties in the
yes,
neighborhood trying to push him into a relationship, he's like,
yes,
"Oh, fine, whatever, whatever." As soon as anybody touched the kids, that's it.
kids,
That was a whole
totally
different
different person,
person. And
totally
I
different
feel
person.
like that is such a parent thing. Like, that's such
Everything.
an innate parent
Yes,
thing that, like, I'm not a parent, like, I no
me either.
experience,
Neither am
but
I.
but I feel like a lot of parents will stand true to this and they will say, I can be the nicest person, but if you come near my kids, then we're
We have a
talking
problem. Yes,
differently. We have a
now we have a
problem.
problem.
And I feel like that was so well executed in this
Yes,
drama because, like,
absolutely.
as soon as anybody came near his kids, no matter if it was like his biological daughter or the other two were just like they were his kids. He made no distinction. I love that
No
about him,
distinction.
that he made
No
no
distinction.
distinction whatsoever
Oh,
between his adopted kids and like his biological daughter. Like, there was no difference. That's his kids, full stop. And I
through and
loved
through,
that. I
through and
really
through.
did. Yeah.
Love that. Oh my gosh, so well done. So well
I
done.
just I just love this drama so much. Like, the
Well, I
characters
have a
shine.
question for you
Go for it.
about um the romance.
Okay.
Where's your stance on that? Where is your stance on the romance between John and her big brother. I know that sounds really weird, but they're
Yes.
not real.
So I feel like with them, it was never quite once they'd met back up, right? Not necessarily when he was younger, but there's even this scene where when they're in their teens, she kind of like lays in his bed and he says,
Yes,
"You're never allowed to lay in my bed."
yes, yes.
Like he starts drawing that line very
Early,
early on,
early, very
very
early.
early on. Whereas with little brother, that's not the case. That's not the case. With little brother, you can see that he loves her, but he's not in love with her.
In love with her. No,
So,
not at
like,
all.
his want is to be part of the family, like,
Family, that's it. Yeah.
officially be part of the family, right? Which he gets
If
because
that
his
means
mother
marrying
marries
her, then
him.
I'll marry her.
Yeah, yeah,
He's like,
yeah.
I
So
don't
it's
care.
different. It's different. But when Big Brother comes back, like, Big Brother, you could already see was in love with her. Like, that is the light in his life, so to speak. So it would be kind of obvious that he would fall for her because she's the one bringing the warmth and the light into his life. So I don't know. I feel like it was handled okay. So I wasn't mad about it because if it had been handled differently, whereas I had seen them as siblings, I had never. Like I saw them like even when they're like bickering, it's little brother and Jian Jian that are bickering, and it's like big
Yes,
brother that is just kind of like taking care of them
stepping
both
in.
and
Yes,
like and
stepping
stepping in
in. Yeah.
as someone who's older and kind of like taking care of the situation. So
Hmm.
he was never kind of like, in that aspect. And I feel like to the story, this was the way of making everybody part of the family, like
Family.
officially.
They had to
So
do that. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I don't know. It wasn't like I wasn't 100% sold on the romance, but I wasn't exactly
Exactly.
mad about it either. So what were your
No,
thoughts?
that's completely my exact. You took the words out of my mouth. I
Yeah.
was not mad at it at all. I mean, if for any, I mean, actually, considering I don't really like, I like strangers to lovers more than just kind of like friends to lovers kind of
Mm-hmm.
format. So usually that's like the least thing that I like is when it comes to romance. So I was already ready to like be just kind of really dislike it, but
Yeah.
I actually didn't dislike it at all. But like wasn't mad at it, but I also wasn't completely in love with it either. As in
Yeah.
like I completely thought their romance was just like, it took over the story and it was just like, oh, they're together. I'm so excited that they're together. Like, no,
Mm,
I still think the focus was about this family and how they became a family, but not at all to me a romance. Like the story to
no.
me could have completely done without it, and I still think it would have worked in the end. But
Yeah.
I would have had a really hard time had they brought someone in to be with the brothers at the same time. So that's
Yeah,
why I
yeah,
knew
yeah, yeah, yeah.
that's why I knew it was like, okay, so he has to be with her because I don't want him to be with anyone else.
No,
And I don't
no,
want her to be with anyone else. So I think it worked in the end for me. But originally I was like, uh, it's not anything to write home about by
no,
any means at
no.
this time.
I think it
And
was
like it,
like it was done well enough, but it wasn't the focus
well
of
enough.
the drama. Yeah,
Exactly,
yeah, yeah.
exactly. It didn't distract, which it could
Exactly.
have easily done.
Yeah, yeah,
It
yeah.
could have easily distracted from
Yeah.
this great
Yeah.
story they had already did. But I think they, like you said, they handled it pretty well considering.
Mm,
Yeah.
yeah. That's what else have you got? Have you got anything else to mention
I
or
I'm checking my list. Oh yes, I do. And I think this is
go
a
ahead?
perfect thing to kind of to end on as far as my questions.
Yeah.
I okay, well, I'm like, should I end with this or should I end with something else? No, okay. So the the title, Go Ahead.
Yeah.
Why is it titled Go Ahead?
To me, now I haven't looked into it. I sometimes do, I sometimes don't. To me, it's like it ties in. So it ties in with the story itself because it's like you keep going, don't you? Like all of this stuff happens, but you go ahead, like you keep going. And I feel like that to me, that is what the title is about. It's like just keep going, and you do, and life does itself work out eventually, I think. And it's like this,
Silly.
yeah, it's like this journey of, keep growing, keep learning, keep, just keep moving. And I feel like that's what it is. But I feel like there's probably like a deeper meaning with it. Sometimes it has nothing to do with the Chinese title. Sometimes it does.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. I was wondering if
I'm
there was
just
like
gonna look it up and see what it comes up as the Chinese title, because I don't actually even know what the Chinese title for it
yeah.
is. Let's see what MDL says. So this is not saying it. Oh no. No,
Uh-oh.
sorry. No, I've just
Oh,
realized apparently they're doing a Korean remake.
you're kidding!
No. There's no way. No way.
Kidding!
Don't
Oh my
touch this
goodness!
title. What? Why?
Anna, are you kidding me?
It's
Oh
called
no!
a apparently it's called, oh, I think I have come across this and I wasn't happy. It's apparently called a prefabricated family.
That's a horrible title, first
That
of all.
is. That is
A horrible title. And
horrible.
I am so nervous. I am so
No.
nervous.
I
Oh
can't
no.
even. I can't even. That's
Oh no.
just
I was not expecting to know this while we were recording this, that was going to be an announcement you would make, that there's going to be a Korean remake, and it's
ah
already there.
I
Oh,
don't
that's gonna.
understand why there is no need.
Wow. There's no need.
No,
There's no
there isn't.
need.
I'm going back for, yeah, I can't find what it's based on, which is really sad because I was trying to
But
find
like I
what
said,
it was based on. I think it
I
is
only
based on
watch
a book.
always based off a book.
Mm,
Okay. Because when I was watching, a lot of times when I just watch dramas in general, like titles are sometimes important to me, especially something where it's like go ahead. So while I was watching, I was trying to find like moments of like maybe quotes like that would include this concept of like go
okay.
ahead.
So
And I
the Chinese title for it is, if you translate it, so the Chinese title is Yi Jia Ren Ziming. So it
Mhm.
translates as, I'm just using, good old apps. Roughly, it translates to in the name of family,
Ah,
which
interesting.
that really suits the drama. So
That fits better. Yeah,
that
so I
does.
wonder where go ahead came from because I was watching the drama trying to find this concept of go ahead. And like you said, in general, if you step back, you're right, like just how life goes, like you said, just go ahead.
Yeah,
But then I feel like there were moments where like the characters themselves would say, like, go ahead. Like there were
yeah,
moments I was paying attention to this, and it was in times of like good things and bad things. Like sometimes it was like, well, when they're yelling at each other, like, well, you just go ahead. You know what
yeah,
I mean?
yeah,
Like there
yeah,
would be
yeah.
moments where like, well, just go ahead. And so I was like, oh, there's a concept of go ahead to some degree. And then there will be other times like you where I feel like I want to say it was Noodle Dad where he's like kind of describing this process of like, oh no, maybe it was John John, like growing, like keep
Yeah, yeah,
going.
keep going.
This
Yeah,
next if this isn't okay now, maybe next week it'll be
yeah.
okay, that kind of concept. So I guess that's as simple as that. But I think the family tie like would be better, honestly.
A
It
lot
would
of
have
the
been a better
time, especially for Chinese dramas, the titles in Chinese are so beautiful, because a lot of them
you
can
can't even
be
translate
like,
it.
yeah, you
Like
can't translate it. Like,
yeah,
it doesn't make
yeah.
sense, because a lot of them can be based on like proverbs, like Chinese proverbs and stuff like that. And it's just that they're really, really beautiful. So I don't know, like maybe that's something I need to look into, like how like
Yeah,
English
how?
names chosen. But then again, it's
Yeah.
the same for Korean dramas. Like
Oh,
sometimes the
absolutely.
Korean titles just sound so much better than
So
the
much better.
Chinese
So
ones.
much better. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I think that's fair. But that was
Yeah.
just one other thing. I was like, am I missing something as far as
I
like
don't think so,
was
no.
I okay, good. Okay, you're like, no, I don't think so.
I don't
Look at
think
me.
so, no, no, no. So I feel like
I,
that's I just wanted to ask. So if you were trying to convince somebody to watch this drama, how would you, like, just a very quick, like, how would you go about it?
I think I would preference with it being a story about found family because even when you told me about it originally in my episode, that was the thing that stood out to me most. As
Mm,
someone who loves that automatically, hearing found family, I was completely sold. But I also would say it does a great job of and I will also say that it is a quieter drama. It's a more slice of life. There's not too much upheaval of
yeah,
too much action, a lot going on. It's based in dialogue and conversations between this family. And if you don't mind those things, if you enjoy those things, if you're a fan of that, then it would be an amazing drama for you to watch. Like we mentioned about some of the things with mental health that it kind of brings up and it touches on. It doesn't go too deep into it, but it does give perspective on those things. If you are wary, though, of things about, abandonment and, you know, mothers leaving children behind, and you might not possibly
yeah,
want to watch the drama. But if you do want to watch a story about found family, about people growing, well, not yeah, people growing and developing into the adults that they want to be, and along the way um, taking hold of the people that support them, then I think this would be a drama to watch for sure.
oh, I'm so glad you liked it. I really, really am so glad you
I
liked
really
it.
did. It was beautiful. I'm so glad I watched it. I am looking forward to watching something else for sure by this team, this
Yeah,
kind of dream team. I am one who I do follow, writers, directors, actors. A lot of times that's the reason why I'll move on to a next thing is like, oh, because I
yeah,
want to watch something with them again. So I've already made up my mind that I definitely want to watch something else with this team. I have to check out something with our actor who played Little Bro. Like I adored
yeah,
him in this.
definitely
And
do.
so
Yeah, yeah,
I knowing that he just has a long kind of, he has a he has a lot of stuff that he's worked in
yeah.
before that I know I have a lot to choose from. So I'm super excited about that. So I am excited to watch a little bit
Ah,
more.
I'm so
Tiny
glad.
I
I'm
am.
so
I really
glad. Thank you so
thank
much
you.
for coming on, Lola. I've had
Thank
an
you
absolute
so much.
blast.
I know I did as well. And I just, like I said, I love recording with you because it does always feel just kind of calm and free flowing. We're not doing too much. We're not stressing. We're not,
No,
like
no.
we're getting through our thoughts on things
Yeah.
without too much thought.
That's
So
basically how I roll. I will
I love
say,
that.
I
And I
will
love it.
say, I still love this drama as much in 2023 as I did in
Did.
2020. That's like where I will leave it. I love it as much now that as I did 3 years ago. So I'm really glad that you also enjoyed it. I've had a
I
really
really
good.
did.
Thank you so much for coming on. Thank you.
Absolutely. No, thank you for having me. You
Oh,
didn't have
so
to have
glad.
me, and you did.
Oh, I
So
do. I
if
love having you on. So plug your socials. Where can people find you?
So, if you want another podcast to listen to, I do focus specifically on K dramas, and I am Lola Pops Off About K dramas on any platform that you listen to podcasts. You'll find me there. But if you want to kind of bother me and kind of like yell at me, you can definitely message me over on Instagram. I'm also Lola Pops Off About K dramas there, and I do also have a website that is lolapopsoffaboutKdramas.com. So those are my kind of go-to places, and I am always down to chat and make tons of friends. Like we were talking about, it's all about
Exactly.
community building. So I am always there, and I am a newbie when it comes to Chinese drama. So if you are a listener of Liliana's podcast here, then and you know so much more about C dramas than I do, you are more than welcome to like come
Slide into
and
your
bother.
DMs.
Yes. Give me Rex. Let me know some of the things you would definitely want me to kind of, check out. I would be so open to that. Do I have a very busy watching schedule? Yes, I do. But I make time and make room, as you can see with I did with Go Ahead, and
Yeah.
I am so glad I did that. So yeah, that's where you'll find me, and I'm so happy that I could do this today.
Yeah,
I'm so
so
happy.
glad. And a possible revival of Tumblr coming
Yes,
soon. Stay
and
tuned.
a possible revival of Tumblr coming soon. I mean, no one probably knows me from my Tumblr days who listens to me, but I think I'm probably not gonna change the title because I still had like Lola something, it's like
Yeah, yeah,
something
yeah,
about
yeah.
Lola Pop back then. So I might keep it exactly the same and then just
Just
like
revive
start
it.
posting.
Yeah,
just to start posting. So we'll see,
exactly.
guys. I'll keep you updated
Keep
over on my
tuned.
podcast.
Yeah. Okay. So that is it for this week. Thank you very much, Lola. Bye.
This has been another episode of the Tea and Soju Asian Drama Podcast. I'm your host, Liliana, and you can come and chat to me on Instagram, Tea and Soju Pod, all one word, and on Twitter, tea_soju_pod. You can also email me at teandsojupodcast@gmail.com. If you would like to support this podcast, please consider joining Patreon for extra content. Lastly, if you enjoy this podcast, please help by rating and reviewing wherever you listen to help others find this drama corner. I'll leave everything linked in the description notes. See you next time for more Asian drama chatter.